Hey there everybody, my name's Aaron. Welcome back to the channel. Well, if you saw my last video about 10 technical things you didn't know about the Atari VCS, also known as the Atari 2600, or if you ever even owned an Atari VCS growing up or maybe later in life, you'll know that it has several ports on the back. It has a couple of joystick ports, has a power port, and it also has a cable coming out of it for video. One port that it doesn't have is a cassette input port. Unlike many of the PCs of the late 70s and early 80s that did have a cassette port on them, the Atari VCS did not. Even the original IBM PC was sold as a model with no floppy drives and only a cassette port for loading data onto the system. In 1982, one company set out to change that. The name of that company was Arcadia, and the name of their product was the Starpath Supercharger. And here it is right here. It's a cartridge that goes into the Atari 2600 or VCS, and there is only one thing coming out of it, and that is a jack to plug into a cassette player. So today, as promised, we're going to take a look at the Starpath Supercharger right here at the Retro Hack Shack. So let's talk about the Starpath, formerly Arcadia, Supercharger. As I mentioned in my 10 technical things video, the Starpath Supercharger added cassette loading functionality to the Atari 2600 or VCS system. It also added 6 kilobytes of RAM, which greatly extended the paltry 128 bytes that was included in the Atari VCS to begin with. The company was actually incorporated in June of 1981 by Craig Nelson and Bob Brown, two former Atari employees. So one thing you'll notice if you ever start looking into the Starpath Supercharger is on all of the later assets that they developed, they all say very clearly formerly Arcadia. Formerly Arcadia, it's stamped on everything. Well, it seems that they started out as a company called Arcadia and changed the name to Starpath, both of which I really like, by the way. This is because the company Emerson had just come out with a video game console called the Arcadia 2001. So being the younger, smaller company, I suppose they decided to change their name. And so it became Starpath. There were only 12 games made available for the Starpath Supercharger, and a few demos and prototype games were available as well. We'll take a look at these in just a minute. One of the things that sets these games apart is the style of the artwork that was included with the games. It is very much an updated look and feel compared to the early days of Atari or even the Activision cartridges that were coming out at the time. The artwork was also noticeably a bit darker, with skulls and people with glowing eyes looking out of a frightening mask. This style of artwork really would have appealed to me as a kid. However, I can imagine parents who were involved in the 80s satanic panic might have been pretty concerned if they looked at some of the artwork that was going on here. The titles of the games were a bit darker as well, with titles such as Killer Satellites or Suicide Mission that may not go over well with parents today. Compared to cartridges, cassettes were cheaper and faster to produce, and they could hold much more data than the limitation of 2K and 4K cartridges which were around at the time. Looking inside the Supercharger, the architecture is deceptively simple. There are 3 2K RAM chips, a 2K ROM chip, and then a controller chip, which handles the analog to digital conversion from the analog audio into the binary data, which will then get loaded into the RAM. So even though the Starpath Supercharger did add 6K of RAM to the system, it really couldn't be utilized to make dramatic improvements to the system overall because it was essentially being used as a storage space. Also, the Starpath Supercharger couldn't overcome the limitations that the system had in terms of its processor or the way that it drew data on the screen. If you want to know more about that, you should check out the 10 technical things video that I mentioned earlier, and I'll put a link to that in the description. There were also a number of knockoffs produced. There was Digitel's Digigame K7, Embracom Electronica's Telegame, VGS Game Changer, and Splice's Comp MK7. There was also the Comavid Magicard programming cartridge, which came with 2K of ROM and 1K of RAM, and you could modify that to save and load programs from cassette. Last but not least, there was the Spectra Video Compumate, which came with 16K of ROM and 2K of RAM, and that would change your 2600 into a cheap computer essentially that would also let you save and load programs from cassette. Starpath had a number of things going against it from the start. Number one, they launched in 1982, which, if you know your game history, you know that there was a big video game crash here in the States in 1983, so the timing wasn't great. Also, the system was based on cassette loading, which at this point, a lot of people were turning towards floppy disk drives, unlike in Europe, where the cassette was still very popular. Not to mention that Atari was getting ready to release the 5200. Nobody knew how that would perform, but it was certain to be incompatible with the Starpath Supercharger. All of this led to resellers not wanting to stock their cassettes in their stores, and so eventually the company had to fold. In November of 1983, Starpath was bought out by the Epix Game Company, who had recently lost a bunch of developers who left to start their own company instead. One of the prototypes that never made it to market was a game called Sweat, and rumor has it that this actually went on to inspire the Epix Games Summer Games, which was very popular for many systems at the time. There was a community-driven project to organize these files and get the audio out on CD. That project was called Stella Gets a New Brain, and you could actually buy copies of that CD for a while they were in production. At this point though, you can find the files for the Starpath Supercharger online. You can download the MP3s, and I'll show you how to load those files in just a minute. Now let's take a look at what these games actually looked like. But before we do, I want to thank the sponsor of this episode, PCBWay. PCBWay offers inexpensive PCB manufacturing and a whole lot more. Need assembly services? No problem. They can do front side, back side, through-hole components, you name it. They also offer 3D printing, CNC milling, and more. So check out PCBWay for your next project, and I thank them for their support of the Retro Hack Shack. Before I start testing these games, let me just show you what my setup is going to be. I have a light sixer, and for, those half a dozen or so people that commented about the difference in the heavy sixer and the light sixer from my previous video and said that the heavy sixer has more shielding inside and that's why it's heavier, go check my social media and you will see a picture that I took of my heavy sixer compared to this light sixer. You'll see that they are identical on the inside in terms of the shielding. The only difference is the thickness of the plastic in terms of what makes it heavier. So that is a misnomer that the heavy sixer was heavy because it had additional shielding. Anyway, I'm going to be using this light sixer today. I've got it out here to do some mods a little bit later with. And then we have right here the Supercharger, the Starpath Supercharger, formerly Arcadia. So yes, it was written on just about everything. It's written back here, formerly Arcadia. This is plugged into a replica of an older cassette deck. This is not very old. I think this is maybe, between 6 and 10 years old, but it looks like the old Panasonic tape players, and it actually has batteries in it that are working that I put in. It has an older style, and that's why I picked this up from eWaste when I did, was I just loved the fact that it was replicating that older style of tape recorder. And I've got a tape loaded. First game I want to try out is Escape from the Mindmaster. I actually have 3 tapes, so we'll be playing that one first. But then I also have Phaser Patrol, and I have Killer Satellite. So those are the ones I'm going to be playing today. There are other videos on YouTube that you can find where people are playing Frogger, because it's a better version of Frogger than you could play, and the one that came with the VCS. So I'll let you go look up that. I didn't want to do something different. I just happen to have these cassettes. And I'm also going to show you how to load from your phone as well, because this thing works really well at loading MP3 files from your phone. But first, let's try loading from a cassette so you can see what this actually would have been like. So take the Starpath Supercharger, plug it in just like a regular old cartridge, and you could hear that click maybe. This does have a tendency, I don't know if it's off center a little bit, but it has a tendency to click on one edge here. So it's no big deal. It's not hurting anything. It just kind of clicks into place kind of sharply. All right, so with that in, let's turn it on and see what we get. I should mention also that I'm using a newer style TV that has just about every input available on it. HDMI, VGA, composite, and of course RF, which the Atari puts out. So I'm using this because it's got kind of a matte screen. CRTs have a lot of glare. They're hard to record. The camera doesn't like it. You get the moire effects. I don't know if I'm saying that right. So for those people that, why didn't you use a CRT? Well, I needed to record this, and this is the easiest way to do it, is by using a digital screen here. You can see here we've got rewind tape and press play. So the tape is already rewound, and so I should just be able to press play, and we'll see if this loads. It may take a minute to get past the leader. I didn't wind that up manually with my finger, as I might have done back in the day. And this is loading. It's a little bit reminiscent of the Naboo. If you saw my video on the Naboo, it loads with this similar tone generation that goes up and up and up until the game is loaded. And there we go. It says press stop tape. I'm actually going to keep the tape going because I don't know what happens if you don't stop the tape. I guess it just sits there and waits. And somehow, this is the cool thing, somehow it is able to recognize, maybe because of there's a signal when I hit the stop, there's maybe a sharp click or something that this thing is able to register and know that I press stop. It's kind of interesting and ingenious, if you ask me. So anyway, as soon as I hit stop, you get this Escape from the Mindmaster, copyright 1982, Starpath. It's a little bit hard to see. I'm sure it is for you too, because they used a pink text on a pink background. Anyway, Escape from the Mindmaster. Now, for me, the first time I played this, it really blew me away. This is a maze game where you're actually going through a 3D maze. Okay, future Aaron here, and well, that's embarrassing. I got everything set up and didn't see in my little camera display that the camera wasn't picking up this great visuals here on this TV. So I'm going to go ahead and splice in some actual gameplay, try to line it up as much as I can, but just keep in mind that what I'm saying in the video may not line up exactly with this extra footage I'm putting in post. And there's a little critter that's following you around. And if I stop talking for a minute, there's this little beeping that's going on in the background, and that will go faster and higher pitch the closer you are to the bad guy, which will, oh, see, I'm really close now, so I've got to get going. But you see, if I move across the screen, I'm further away from him, and that beeping will slow down. Anyway, the trick here is to find these different shaped jigsaw pieces or shapes here. You have to grab them and then find the receptacle, the matching shape receptacle in a wall somewhere, and you can put those in. And then once you have, oop, there he goes. You see that? Okay, now he can't go through doors. You have a little map down here that shows you where you are in the maze. So I'm going to go back over here and see if I can find that square receptacle somewhere over there. Oh, now here's the other thing. They have these mini games. This is so cool. It's a mini game that's built in, and you basically have to dodge these falling blocks or whatever. You have a little spaceship here. And the better you do at this game, you can see it's getting faster. The blocks are getting bigger. You will get extra points from the Mindmaster if you can do very well at this game. And, oh, I got hit a little bit, took a little bit of damage. And just for the sake of the video, I'm not going to go any further. I'll just go ahead and die here so you can see what happens. Now, I just died. Here's my score down here, kind of like my time remaining. If you do really well, you'll get extra points so you can last a little bit longer. And then I can go through this maze again and find all of the shapes and get them in the proper place. And once you do that, then you can go up the stairs. You have to find where the stairs are. You can go up the stairs, go to the next level, and so on and so on. And eventually, you will have to play the second tape, or I think maybe all of the segments of this are on the same tape. So then I would play the next segment of the tape. It would load that into memory, and I would continue going from there. So it did have, the Starpath Supercharger did have the concept of multi-loading, the same way you would do with a floppy disk. Take it out, put disk 2 in, start that, and it would load the rest of the game, etc. This had a similar paradigm here where you can load multiple segments of the tape to, if you have a really long game or you need more memory, clear out the memory, load the next segment of the game, and go from there. So really cool game. The fact that this does 3D, I mean, one of my favorite games as a kid was Dungeons of Daggerth on the TRS-80 color computer, my first computer. And it had kind of this style, this look and feel, but, you know, that had way more memory. I mean, it 4K, 16K, you know, 32, 64K, you could upgrade it. You know, this thing has 128 bytes on board and 6K on the cartridge, and it's able to do this with a lot less resources in the Atari 2600 than were on the color computer. So really, really impressive game. But let's move on to loading games from a phone or some sort of digital device. Okay, so now let's move on to a game called Phaser Patrol. And I just want to give you a quick look inside the manual. I think I showed some covers earlier. The manual for this is actually, you know, really well done for a game manual of this type. This is somewhat like Star Raiders, for the, there was different versions for even the 2600, but most notably for the Atari 800 when it came out. So it's very similar to that. You have sectors here. And what's cool is they make use of the left difficulty switch. You put the left difficulty switch in the B position, and that brings up the map where you can select which sector you want to move around to. There are star bases and enemy sectors and unknown sectors. If you get hurt on fighting the enemies and you want to go back and repair yourself, you can just quickly warp to a friendly star base. You sit there for a few minutes. It recharges your shields, torpedoes, and fixes your ship and everything. Then you can go back to a sector where the enemy is and start fighting them there. So yeah, really well detailed. It has information for all the controls, nice color graphics. It tells you about your little control panel down on the bottom of the screen, which you'll see in a minute. Tells you where your enemies are and what the status of your ship is. So really cool game. Let's go ahead and load this one from my phone. So I've got the screen up here, which is ready for me to play. It assumes I have a tape player connected, but at this time I have the Starpath Supercharger connected to my phone down here. Always nice to have a 3.5-inch millimeter jack here, a headphone jack on your phone. I don't know why they're getting rid of those. Companies are dumb for doing that, in my opinion. But here we go. All the games here are on my phone. I can go in and select the one that I want. Again, these are downloadable online. You can find them by doing some searches. And the one that we want is Killer Satellites. Phaser Patrol, all the way down here at the bottom, Phaser Patrol, NTSC, because there are both NTSC versions and PAL versions of these games. So make sure you've got the right one for your region. But all I have to do is play that audio tape, and you will see that we are loading from the phone really easily. You do have to get your volume set just right. I like to start at about 80% volume for my phone and then either go up or down if I have any problems. It says stop tape, but it stopped. The playing of the media file stopped and it immediately jumped into the game. So that's all there is to it. Really simple and easy game loading from your phone. Really reliable from what I found compared to other systems, other games. You know, all the home computers seem to have a little bit of issues with it. You have to get things just right. But so far, all of these games have loaded for me either on the first try or, you know, with a little bit of fiddling with the volume, second or third try. And then once I get that tuned in and dialed in correctly, they just work and they load really quickly, really easily. And it's a great way to use the Starpath Supercharger. So let's just try this game out. Ah, there we go. I can hear the sound now. Okay, now I'm in the game. Left difficulty switch. Let's go to an enemy sector. And at any time, you can switch the difficulty mode back, and you'll be in this screen. It's got a little rangefinder there that tells me how close I am. Oop, there's an enemy. Let's see if I can get him. Come on, baby. My computer's damaged, so I don't know if that makes it harder to... Ah, come on, dude. This is hard. Ooh, there, I got one. Got another one. So if you get them in the targeting reticle there, Scan damaged. If you get them in the targeting reticle, it will lock onto them and get them that way. But I'm damaged right now, so I'm going to go to a starbase sector. I love the use of that difficulty switch as something that you can do. It says standby down here. It might be difficult to see. That little sound filled up my fuel and all my gauges are green. So now I can go back. Let's go back to that same sector. There we go. We're back. I need to find an enemy. Let's see if I can line them up and get locked on again. Oh man, they're really killing me. There we go. See that? I got locked on. Oh, almost. Uh-oh. Torpedo's destroyed. I got to get out of here. I've got to get out of here quick. Ship destroyed. I'm dead. So, yeah, really, really fun game. You can tell the graphics are a little bit better. Everything's a little bit more responsive. I mean, even this little, I guess that's supposed to be like a computer analyzing or something down there at the bottom. I don't know. I'll have to check the manual. But yeah, this is a good example of the graphics capability of this thing. Again, it's not 10 times better than the Atari games because it still has to keep up with scan lines. It has to count where things are. I mean, it's still got to take into account all of those difficult things that you do with the Atari 2600, but it's just got more memory and it can do things. It can do more things essentially. Better sound, better graphics. I would say that the games for the Starpath Supercharger are more in the realm of the Intellivision compared to the Atari 2600. So that's the kind of step up that you're going to see, maybe getting towards the realm of the ColecoVision in comparison, but you're not going to see, the Nintendo, right? You're not going to see Nintendo Entertainment System type graphics, but you are going to be able to see some much improved graphics over the base Atari 2600 when this came out in 1982. Later on, of course, people were able to do all sorts of cool things with games for the Atari 2600. But in 1982, when this came out, this would have been seen, anybody that would have seen these games would have been like, wow, I've never seen that before on an Atari, which is what we called it. It was the only thing. So we just called it the Atari. Okay, let's take a look at one more game. Let's take a look at Killer Satellites. Well, I don't have the manual for this one. I think I've seen it played a couple times. Let's just go ahead and play it and see if we can figure it out. Okay, side-scrolling shooter. Oh, it's kind of like Defender. Nice. Okay, so this should be relatively straightforward. There we go. Nice. Oop, there's another one. What are you talking about? I didn't hit that. There we go. First level down. They're doing something interesting with the 2 up here. It's got this weird curly Q at the bottom instead of just using a flat 2 like everybody else does. Watch when this 2's okay, but watch the 2's up here. If I get a 2. Oh, that's a 3. Let's see. I love look at the detail on this little alien dude here. Okay, there's a 2. See the 2? Oh! I have a hard time getting 2s on this game until it starts counting up. Oh, there's a 2. Isn't that weird, that little curly Q thing? So far, not a very challenging game. I wonder if I can select multiple... Oh, yeah, you can choose... Maybe these are different difficulty or different levels. So you can start on level 15. Let's see what that's like. Oh, wow, they come... Oh, my goodness. I can't even get that guy. He's indestructible. Ah! Okay, it does get harder. The first 2 levels were super easy, but setting this to level 15 has definitely made a big difference. It doesn't have an auto fire, unfortunately, so you have to mash the button. Oh! And I went too fast, just like I do with Defender. Okay, well, I cleared the level at least. But yeah, level 15 is a lot harder than level 2. So, yeah, you could have like hours of fun playing this game. It levels up seemingly pretty linearly and nicely. So, yeah, I would definitely play this as a kid. Although, I think Starpath? I'll put the correct name of it down below. So basically, it's the second version of Defender. Defender 2 was much better than even this was. So, much better game. But yeah, this is still very fun for 1982. I would definitely play this for a while. One last thing I'll say about the Starpath Supercharger, there was several mods for this over the years. This will work with any 2600, but if you wanted to use it with the 7800, which was 2600 compatible, it was not compatible with the Supercharger. So there are some mods that you can do to the Supercharger to get that to work with the 7800. There's also some mods that you can do so that you can load any game, not just the Supercharger, formerly Arcadia games. You can actually load most of the 2K and 4K games. You can convert the binaries to a cassette format and load those in over using the Supercharger. I found that on an old website that I had to look up on the Wayback Machine on Internet Archive, but there was a mod at least that allowed you to load other games from tape. Not something I'm going to do today, but it's just interesting what people made use of this cartridge for beyond just playing the Starpath Supercharger games. So the Starpath Supercharger, a really incredible add-on to the 2600 that I never used as a kid, but I certainly am glad I know about it now, and I'm glad I have one to play with on real hardware. It does make a difference sometimes using the actual hardware, although you can load on an emulator like Stella. It will let you load cassettes in the form of a binary file. And it will load those just fine. It does support those. So if you don't have a 2600 and you want to check out the Starpath Supercharger cassettes or programs, you can do that through an emulator as well. Now, I want to welcome all of the new subscribers. I've got a bunch of new subscribers after that last video, which did very well. So welcome to all of you. And I do want to share some big news. As this is my 100th episode, although the timing is just coincidental, I will be launching a second channel. So the second channel will have more of what you see on this channel, but maybe not as scripted and maybe not as polished. So there might be some things on there, some little things I pick up here and there that I just want to do a quick video about, or maybe a really long form video in the way of a repair that many people would just want to skip over. Well, you can find that content on my second channel, and you'll find that linked in the description below. And it's going to be called Retro Hack Shack After Hours. So if you're a subscriber to my channel and you want even more content, head over to Retro Hack Shack After Hours and subscribe there as well. And you'll see things like E-Waste Wednesday and a lot of other features that I know a lot of my regular viewers really like. So I'll see you over there. Be sure to head over and subscribe, and I thank you for that. Speaking of thank you, thanks to all my patrons who support the channel. If you want to become a patron, you'll see information coming up in the credits along with the names of those patrons that I already have. So thanks again to them. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Patrons receive ad-free and early access to content after the episode commentary, and of course, your name in the credits. If you liked that episode, here's a few more you might enjoy, and I thank you for your support.
End of line.